This is a different type of birth story episode today, but one that I know you're going to find helpful. Warning, it does involve loss. Welcome to the All About Pregnancy and Birth podcast. I'm Dr. Nicole Calloway Rankins, a board-certified OBGYN who's been in practice for nearly 15 years. I've had the privilege of helping over 1,000 babies into this world, and I'm here to help you be calm, confident, and empowered to have a beautiful pregnancy and birth. Quick note, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. Check out the full disclaimer at drnicolerankins.com/disclaimer. Now let's get to it. Hello. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. This is episode number 116. I am so glad that you have decided to spend a bit of your time with me today. It is a birth story episode today, and it's a bit of a different one. Today we have Eileen Robertson Hamra on the podcast. After having 3 children with her first husband, Brian, Eileen had a tubal ligation because she was certain that she did not want any more children. However, unfortunately, Brian was tragically killed in a plane crash when their children were 4, 7, and 8, and Eileen was 41. She was lucky enough to fall in love and marry another man, Mike, 5 years after Brian's death. Mike didn't have any children, so Eileen opened herself up to the possibility of another child. She underwent IVF at the age of 45, got pregnant using her own eggs, and gave birth to a healthy 11-pound, 5-ounce baby at age 46. You are going to hear all the details of that amazing journey today. Eileen and I chat about what it's like to suddenly be a widow with 3 young children, how she reimagined what was possible for a family, even though it was different than what she originally planned, what pregnancy at age 45 was like for her, what it's been like to be an older mom, and much, much more, including a book she wrote about her experience called Time to Fly. Eileen has some really incredible insight and just great life advice, and I know that you are definitely going to enjoy this episode. Now, before we get into the episode, let me do a listener shout out. This is from R. Pat, and the title of the review says, "Love the info," and I did shorten it just a bit. I had a rough time trying to find a podcast about pregnancy and birth. I'm planning to start trying this year and just wanted to learn more about pregnancy and birth before it becomes a reality for me. And this was exactly what I was looking for. Most podcasts I came across were women talking about their pregnancy stories, but I was looking for one by a licensed physician who can give me a heads up on what to ask my provider when it's time. I don't want to walk away disappointed in my experience when I leave the doctor's office. I want to be prepared and what to expect. I love how informative and supportive this podcast is and how much I've already learned in just a few episodes. Thank you for doing this. Well, you are so welcome, RPAT. I am so glad that you are finding the information helpful, and I love how you are getting prepared for your pregnancy even before you get pregnant. Now, I have something coming up that I know you will also love, that I know you'll all love. I am doing a live workshop at the beginning of June on how to make the best of your prenatal care experience. In this live workshop, you'll learn exactly how prenatal care is structured, how it's supposed to be structured, what to expect each trimester, all the tests that happen, including a nice downloadable guide, questions to ask. There will be tons and tons of great info in this workshop. And I'm super excited to do it live because we'll have the opportunity to interact. You'll be able to ask me questions beyond what we can do here on the podcast. So follow me on Instagram at Dr. Nicole Rankins or join my email list at drnicolerankins.com/email so you can be the first to know about the details of the workshop. There will be a limited number of spaces in the live class, so you want to hop on it if you really want to do it. So again, follow me on Instagram at Dr. Nicole Rankins or join my email list, drnicolerankins.com/email. So you can be the first to know all the details of that upcoming workshop. All right, let's get into the episode with Eileen. so much, Eileen, for agreeing to come onto the podcast. This is going to be a bit of a different birth story episode for sure, but one that I think is going to be very, very useful. So I appreciate you coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So why don't you start off by telling us a bit about yourself, your work, if you'd like, and your family?
Yeah. So I'm an author now. I've written my first book, Time to Fly, Life and Love After Loss. I do a lot of philanthropic work in Chicago around health and well-being, and also have a small company that does meditation, yoga, and other corporate wellness programs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what about your family?
So I have 4 children. I am remarried, and this goes into a little bit my story. My first husband, unfortunately, was killed in a plane crash in 2011. We had 3 children in that marriage, and happily married. And then, my life took a turn, and I was lucky though, and I found another amazing man and was remarried in 2016. And now we together have our 4th child, Zach, who is 3.5 now.
All right. And we're going to get into the evolution of all of that. So let's start with the death of your first husband, Brian. I know that was obviously completely unexpected and unimaginable, the grief, all of those things. So what was that like to suddenly and unexpectedly be a single mom of 3 young children?
Yeah, it was, like you said, completely shocking. Not what I expected, not what I wanted. It was 3 days before Christmas.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was really awful. He was flying a plane and his right engine failed, and it was very close to the ground, so there was actually nothing he could do. And yeah, so my life, I was 41 at the time, and my life, I just planned on being Mrs. Brian Robertson, and I was happy, mom. I was taking care of the kids, and yeah, my life turned around, and it took a lot of healing, and I share a lot about that in the book.
Sure.
About what it was like and the transformation of really my identity, because I could no longer be his wife in the same way that I had been being it. And again, and it also actually really caused an evolution in my motherhood as well, because like you just said, I became a single mother overnight, and being a single parent is not easy. Mm-hmm. It's not impossible. And I have lots of wonderful friends that do it, but I have a lot of respect. And it was definitely not what I had planned, and it caused me to grow and develop more than I thought that I could. That's for sure.
Sure. And we're going to, of course, link to your book in the show notes, and you can tell us about where folks can find it at the end, because it's a very inspiring story for sure. But at what point did you decide that you were ready to date again?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So, when Brian first passed, I really did believe that I was never going to want to get remarried again. There was nothing inside of me that thought I would be open to remarrying. I was in love with Brian. We had a great relationship. We had 3 young kids who were like 4, 7, and 8 at the time he passed. And I just really did believe that I was going to be not happy, but I would be okay single. And about the year mark, well, I guess probably, I don't know, so he died in December. I would say in the summertime, the late summer, it was probably the first time I ever thought, you know what, this is really hard being a single mom. I don't know if I can do this forever. And I'm 41, and that's a really long time to not have a partner. And honestly, not to have an intimate partner. And
sure.
So I was thinking, that's when it probably the first thoughts. And then, of course, I felt awful that I would even have those thoughts, and blah, blah, blah. And then, and also the reality of not being married had sunk in more. And it was around the new year. So that would have been our 12th wedding anniversary. And I had started contemplating the idea of taking off my wedding bands and what that might look like. And it was a really painful thought initially, but then my girlfriend gave me this great idea of creating a past, present, future ring and putting the diamond, and stones on my right hand. And I was like, that feels, and I actually still wear it. That felt like, okay, I can still have a relationship with him, even though it's not an earthly marriage. But then it was the idea of really opening myself up to, maybe there is someone else out there, which I actually initially also did not believe I could get lucky twice.
Right.
So, there was a lot of things, and also how the kids would respond. I mean, it was, as anyone who's moving into either from a divorce or a death, like moving into that second committed relationship, it's it's way more complicated, I would say, than the first time.
Absolutely.
So, it took something, but I was lucky to find someone. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you met your second husband, Mike, and you all got married, you said in 2016.
Correct.
So 5 years after Brian died, and he did not have children. Now,
yes.
Before you got married, did you talk about whether or not you would have children together?
Absolutely. And that was actually one of, I would say, probably the issue that was going to determine whether we really could, have this relationship. And I, on my third pregnancy, I actually was clear that I never wanted to have any more children, and I tied my tubes. So I was like very sure that I was, 37 at the time.
Right.
I was happy. I was like, I felt blessed that I had 3 healthy children.
Sure.
And I'm good. I'm done.
Right.
And then I meet Mike. And what are the chances that, you meet someone that doesn't have children? And I fell in love, and we had a lot of really heart-to-heart conversations about, was I willing? And, he was open to, obviously, to adopting, Brian and I's 3 children, and he has done that, and that was all great. But he really did want the idea of a biological child.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, if the tables were turned and the scenario is the opposite, I would want that opportunity. So I really did have to dig deep and look in and see, was I willing to do what it was going to take and be willing to fail? And if we did fail, is that the only reason our relationship was together? Like the whole thing. And yes. So absolutely, we did a lot of heart-to-heart conversations and a lot of going to the doctor, and just to even see, is this even, a dream worth having kind of thing. And so we did, definitely.
Yeah. And are you all about the same age?
We are. He's a couple years older than me. He was, born in 68 and I'm born in 70.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
And had he been married before? I'm just curious.
I know.
Typical.
No. Yeah. And, it's so funny because then, you have the opposite end. It's like, okay, well, why was he never married? You know what I mean? So he was never married. He had been in committed relationships, but he never had taken that leap and, made the commitment. So, and it's interesting because, I was not what he thought he would find and fall in love with and marry. Like he was like, I'm going to marry a widow with 3 kids. This is not how I thought it was going to work out,
Right.
And he was attractive and successful, and, he just thought he would be able to meet someone. And I say, he was just waiting for me, waiting for us to meet. But, yeah.
Wow.
And there was a very strong connection, as most people feel. Like it was like I knew right away.
Gotcha.
It took him a hot minute to figure it out. but I met him, and I talk a little bit about this in the book. Oh, actually a lot about this, but like I knew he was it.
Right. Yeah. So once you all got married and you were like, okay, we're going to try and have a baby together. How soon did you try to start having a baby, and did you go straight to IVF?
Yes. So we actually started trying even before we got married because, we're like, time is of the essence. So as soon as we made the commitment, we got engaged, I was like, okay, full force, we're going to do this. And in my mind, I had like boundaries. I'm a little bit type A. So I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. We're going to go for it. In my mind, I was like, if we need to be willing, or I need to be willing to try more than once because, at my age, at this point, I was 45 when we even started trying. So I was like, I need to be willing to go more than once. So in my mind, I was like, I will be willing to try 3 rounds with my own eggs. And that's actually another story. Like originally I was like, let's just go straight to donor eggs.
Right.
And, that was a conversation we needed to have. And, I'm one, maybe my type A or my like get it done attitude was like, okay, that's all the doctors say, that's your surest, at my age, your surest and fastest way to get pregnant.
Right.
But, then I had to look and we had to look and I was like, it was possible. It was not probable, but it was possible for us to conceive. And I had to look and I said, okay, what will I regret more? Never trying and failing or never trying. And I was like, I got to try because if we could dream, if I had a magic wand, I wanted our biological child.
Sure.
All the thoughts like, oh, it's not possible. It's not probable. But no doctor told us it wasn't possible. Like right. I still had my numbers, my FSH was decent, my AM, whatever those numbers all are, but like all the numbers were not great, but they were good.
Right.
Good enough to be at least a little bit logical to try. So we did 3 rounds of IVF, retrieving my own eggs. I was able to retrieve a lot of eggs. Not a lot, but like relative, like, good 9 to 12 each round. I was like super proud of my ovaries and
sure.
I was on
like my 45-year-old ovaries are smashing it.
Yes,
okay?
They are like killing it. And, I of course was on the highest doses of everything. Right. And it was not easy. It was exhausting and all of, emotionally exhausting, the roller coaster of it all too. Right. Yeah. Like I'm sure your listeners know it's like every phone call. What's my estrogen? What's my follicle count? What are the sizes? Yep. I mean, you just become immersed in this world of, praying for the miracle. And so we wanted it. We ended up getting pregnant on the 3rd round with my own egg, and it didn't last, right? It was my HCG quickly, determined it wasn't growing. It wasn't going to make it.
Okay.
So we then decided, okay, we're going to go for a donor round and, again, get it done. I decided on frozen eggs. And I had already been looking. So we were like, we found a donor. We did a donor round and we did not have great numbers and it did not take. And we were all kind of scratching our heads like, we kind of thought that was the sure thing, right? And background, I didn't have trouble getting pregnant with my other 3. I did have a couple of miscarriages, but, my fertility was pretty good, at least in my 30s, right?
Sure. So let me just say, so you had retrieved all of these eggs, you tried with your own egg and still had some frozen embryos available, but instead decided to try the donor route.
Yeah. Well, no, I never had any frozen. We always, for those first 3 rounds, we put everything in.
Got it. Okay.
Because statistically,
sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Statistically, it was safe, right? I was not really at risk of having multiples, and it would be a blessing if even one took.
Gotcha.
So after all of those, and we never did freeze anything and we never did any genetic testing either. Cause I was like, well, if we get lucky and we get pregnant, like, if there's something genetically wrong, most likely it will miscarry. So, and we would just cross that bridge. And so anyway, we had tried this. So 3 rounds my own, 1 round a donor.
Okay.
And now we are ready to do another donor round. So we had some more frozen eggs from a donor, beautiful, lovely, generous, amazing people who donate eggs who are, God bless you for families who have trouble. Right. And so we have these donor eggs and I go in for my baseline and which, you guys tell us like how many follicles, and it was August 8th. And I had 16, and it was like a record number.
Right.
For me. And I went to lunch with a girlfriend, and I just had this gut, like, should I try one more time?
Right.
And I know this is like it's so hard, right, to make those choices because you don't want to be a fool. You don't want to keep
100%.
trying.
And it's expensive. It ain't cheap.
Oh, absolutely. And it's time and it's energy and money, all of the things, right?
Yes.
And I just had this gut feeling, and I couldn't stop thinking. And my friend was like, I think you should go for it. And so I texted my doctor at lunch. She calls me right away, Dr. Beltsos in Chicago. And she said, I think it's reasonable. Let's give it one more time.
Okay.
And at that point, she had already recommended that I not do it. So she must have had some gut feeling.
Sure.
So I go through, I did not have great numbers. It was fine. I was produced, because I had been suppressed, right, in getting ready for a donor round. So, all the emotions are there. I end up having my retrieval on my birthday, my 46th birthday. And we got 5, I think, out of the 16, or maybe 7. I don't remember at this point. We had 3 embryos growing. At this point, we decided to go ahead and do the genetic testing and the freezing and prepare my uterus for transplant.
Sure.
And I was like, let's just go all in. One more time, all in, all the stops, and every moment. And I just want to, for listeners, like, it's like, I questioned the whole thing the whole time. I was like, that was stupid. I didn't have great numbers. I was foolish. I'm wasting time. I'm wasting money. This was not a good idea. Right. And I was like, but you're already in, just keep going.
Right.
So when they told us we had one embryo that made it to day 6, it was a 6AB. Every all those messages are like miracles, right? You're like, oh my God. And I was like, go for it. Even though it's expensive, go ahead and do the genetic testing, go ahead and freeze it. A couple weeks later, I get the phone call from my doctor, and she's like, Eileen, you have a genetically normal embryo. And I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. And then like all people in this process then were like, oh my God, now I've got to get this baby to stick.
Right.
It's like, it's still frozen. It was like the elation of knowing I had one, like within about 30 seconds turned into the sheer panic of I have one.
Right. So just one of the 3 was normal?
Only one could be genetically tested. They were like the by 3, by day 5, we still had 2. By day 6, we had 1.
Oh my God. Okay.
Oh yeah. So it was the full, and so then, we actually did the mitochondrial testing as well. And that came also back normal. So we were so hopeful. And so, I joke about this, but like my sister and I, who was with me through every cycle, obviously. And I was like, we're going to get this baby to stick. Or we like joked about chewing gum, or like chew gum, like whatever we can do to get this baby to stick.
Let's go get this baby to stick.
Are you chewing? We'd call each other, are you chewing gum? Anyway, so just to try to bring some levity to the situation.
Sure.
And then also, honestly, and I think, one of the things I wanted to say, I honestly also felt a big trust in the process. I was like, just keep going. If it's meant to work out, it's going to work out. Right. And I honestly do not have any control. I can do what I can do.
Sure.
And then there's more at play. And if losing Brian didn't teach me that one, I was like, we did everything we knew to do, and he still died, right? It was like, and completely out of our control, and I'm okay. So it's like, I'm going to give it all I can do and go for this baby. This is what we really, really want. And it's not all up to me. So a lot, giving it up to God or giving it up to just universe or whatever you want to call it. But we were just, okay. So anyway, yeah. And then we were lucky. We were able to get pregnant. It was, he was 11 pounds, 5 ounces.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, when he was born. And
wow.
Yeah, he is a miracle child. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, okay, we just have to recap this. So you're 45 years old, almost.
I'm 46. No, I had him when I was 46. Yeah.
You had gone through 3 cycles already with your own eggs, a donor cycle, then again with your own eggs, and then just got down to this one chance.
Yes.
And it worked out.
Yeah.
That is such an emotional, I mean, you talked about it, and I'm sure you talk about it more in the book, but just like the ups and downs is just a lot.
It is a lot. So I would tell you something that's actually really also miraculous about this. So Brian, if you're into astrology, if you're not in, but like he died on the winter solstice, which is the darkest, shortest day of the year. And Zach Hamra was born on the summer solstice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was like,
wow.
It's so cliche. You can't even make that up.
Right.
I was
right.
like, we weren't planning. You don't plan that.
Sure.
Except for that he was, my last doctor's appointment before the planned C-section. The woman took the ultrasound, and she was like, "Do you have gestational diabetes?" And I was like, "No, but if I need to get this baby out, I'm good. Whatever. I go, I'll stop eating right now. Whenever you have an opening." Yeah, like they're like, this baby is measuring like over 11 pounds. Big. I was like, yeah, we need to go. I'm ready. Get him out. Right. So it was summer solstice.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So what was your pregnancy like? Did you have any complications or issues or anything during your pregnancy?
Okay, so the biggest difference I would say is 2 things. One, I definitely experienced much more, call emotional depression in the first bit. And I think that partly is due to the progesterone and hormones that you need to take when you're supporting a pregnancy through IVF. Mm-hmm. And so, and I had not, I'm not a happy pregnant person anyway. Actually, it was one of the things I warned Mike about. I was like, I'm just warning you now. I am not happy. A lot of women are amazing. They feel wonderful. They want to have sex all the time. I'm like,
right. That's not me. That's not me.
Right. So it was, I would say, probably the worst of that. Like, I was not happy. I'm crabby. I'm tired. And I was really uncomfortable. And then I also had pretty severe anemia. Probably because he was just getting so big, and maybe I don't even know why. But so I had, what do you call that when your legs are twitch all the time, or like a restless leg?
Oh, restless leg.
Oh, that was awful.
Oh,
it was awful. Like I would just walk. I would get up every night and just like walk to try to just tire myself out and like move my legs to see if it could help. And I watched a lot of television, and so, which I don't normally do. So, and my kids are all like, "You don't ever need to do that, Mom, ever again." Because they were old enough to now watch me. So straight up like medical risk, except for being high risk age in general, and a 4th C-section and a really big baby. No, I was good. Yeah, I was lucky. Yeah.
Okay, good. And then how was the 4th C-section? I mean, a 4th C-section can carry substantial risk for bleeding, and you're already anemic and things like that. So how was the birth itself?
We were prepared. So we already had a blood transfusion ready, and had the baby at Northwestern Hospital, which is a very well-equipped hospital. So I felt very safe, but I could tell it was definitely a different experience.
Right.
Like they were not playing around.
Right.
The doctors were very serious. And I would say, for me, that was what was most important. A lot of women want doctors with wonderful bedside manner or whatever they want. Right. And everyone needs to find the match. But like for me at that point, I was like, I'm good. You don't need to be nice to me. You just need to get me out alive.
Gotcha.
And they were very nice. But But it was they were not like, Mike, hey. They were like, okay, 2 doctors, serious surgery. And I could tell there was a different mood or tone, which I was expecting.
Yeah.
I wasn't like, oh, what's going on here? I'm like, no, I'm 46 and I'm anemic and this is a big baby and I want you to be very serious. So,
right.
And it was, it was uneventful, except for that I did end up with needing some, I forget how much blood, but they did give me someone else's extra blood to help me recover more quickly. So, yeah.
Okay. Was it a particularly long C-section, or did it go fairly
routine? I mean, the funniest part about it was like when the baby came out, they were like, oh my God.
This is a giant child.
Yeah. They were like, we need another chart. They were like, this has got to be it was for many of the people in the room, the biggest baby they had ever seen.
Okay.
So yeah, 11 pounds, 5 ounces is no joke. Yeah.
And how big were your other three?
Not 5'13". No,
not close.
half.
Not that.
You could add my first two, 5'13" and 6'9" together. And, it's, I think, who knows, age, different genes from the father.
Right, different. Right.
He was strong. He came out, ready to go. So
sure.
And healthy.
Yeah.
And he did end up in the NICU. Big babies often do. Little ones do, and big ones do too, because they do have trouble regulating blood sugar. And so he did spend the majority of the time in the hospital in the NICU, which is very stressful. At the time, it was very stressful. Like now I look back and I'm like, it's all you want is your baby to be healthy. So like, that's the right place. But it was, so I would say if anything, that was the only other, difficulty. Yeah. But again, I think I kind of was prepared. I was like, he probably will end up there because he will need a lot to eat. And, anyway, so, and he was good.
Yeah.
He was good.
So how long did he stay in the NICU?
One day more than normal. So I think he was, we got one extra night in the hospital for like 3 or 4 nights. Like normally you spend 3 nights. Yeah. It was not long. He was able to regulate pretty quickly. Yeah.
Good. And go home with
us. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. So then what was the postpartum period like for you?
So given it was my 4th C-section, I had learned the lessons of you do not plan anything. Do not try to do anything. You really need to physically recover.
Right.
And for people that are like me and, like to go and don't like to be down, it's not natural necessarily. But I was like, I learned like, if you push it, it's not going to go well.
Gotcha.
So it will not be worth it. So, and he actually was the best nurser that I had. Like, so he nursed better than the other babies, maybe because he was stronger and bigger, and I'm not sure exactly, but so that was better. But I did have to supplement because he was so big. And
gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, I healed normally. I had a lot of swelling, but that passed eventually. And, I was really, it's funny. I was really nervous because I remember one of my last doctor's appointments. I was like, if I feel this bad now when I'm pregnant, what is it going to be like after? And my doctor said, she's like, you're probably going to feel better. And I was like, I hope so. And I did. It was like, I was so tired of being pregnant that not carrying around and creating another human and just nursing him was actually physically better for me.
Gotcha. So how did you adjust to, a couple of things. How did you adjust to having a new kind of blended family? Were there any issues with that? And that your children, your first 3 children have a different father than the baby?
Yeah. So one miracle was, Melanie, who's my oldest, right? And probably initially the most resistant to me getting remarried.
Mm-hmm.
She, by the time we got married and we had, dated for a while, like she loved him and she loved Mike and she was very happy that he was going to be her father figure. But she initially was like, no, I don't need that. And she came to the hospital and she was holding him for the first time. And she looked at me and she's like, oh my God, Mom, I had no idea I would love him this much. And, I think we were all kind of taken aback by that. And one of the things that I had imagined, which did not come true, was that, that there wouldn't be like sibling rivalry, right? Because there's a 9-year age difference between Zach and Max, who's the next oldest. And I just thought they're going to be mature and they won't tease him. And, and I was like, okay, that pretty quickly, I mean, it didn't happen for 6 months, but it was like pretty quickly when Zach was kind of, able to take it. And it's hilarious. There's a lot of that sibling silliness and it is joyful, but it's like, I can't believe you're picking on your 3-year-old, but he'll do the same. He'll pick on them, like it's interesting. It is sweet. I do think, for Max, because he was only 4 when Brian died, and he was very gung-ho to find a new dad.
Okay.
And I think, when he was little, his idea of a dad, and I need a dad, and you found a dad, awesome, Mike's my dad. And he called him dad. And the girls never called him dad. They always called him Mike. And Max wanted to call him dad. And as soon as Zach was born, Max really was able to see what he lost for the first time. He never... he was a child and he never could quite put the whole picture together. And now, he's like, oh my God, that's a real dad and a real son. Who am I to Mike? And who is Brian now? Or who is my dad? And so he definitely went through a period of time, good 2 years where he struggled with reconciling all of that. And part of it was all of us, growing through that. So, even though it was beautiful, it did, it was not painful too.
Sure. And then how have you been able to honor Brian's memory in the setting of your new family?
Yeah. So, Brian was a big solar energy, renewable energy advocate. He was the CEO of a solar energy company when he died. So we had done a lot of, and he was also an entrepreneur. So we've done lots of things in his honor, to putting solar panels on schools and, sponsoring entrepreneurial, pitch contests and things like that. And I'm really lucky. And this was another reason I knew Mike was the guy, is that, Mike really embraces all of it. Right. Like, and I think it takes a big person, right?
100%.
To not, I think it's a little easier because, there's no like, like personal, like he's not around. So it's not like, there's not a jealousy from that perspective, but, often when people die young, Brian was 38, they die and they're amazing, right? And they're always going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And so
you remember the best about people.
Right. Yeah. And Brian was pretty damn amazing. And he wasn't perfect for sure. So, but Mike, he really does embrace all of it. And, we see his family and like, Mike is, and the whole family and the entire Robertson family has, welcomed him, and we go up to the lake. Brian was Canadian. So we, and Mike will actually think of, telling Brian's parents things before I even will. He'd be like, oh, Max, he's in puberty, right? He has a teeny tiny mustache. He shaved it. And, you probably, Max hears this. I'm sorry. But, he sends it to, a note to Dave and Donna and says, hey, your grandson, like that.
That's
and so,
nice.
It's a combination of honoring him, but also, doing our best to keep it all together, all 3 families. And,
that's lovely.
Thank you for asking. Yeah.
And then finally, what challenges have you had being a quote unquote, I hate to say the word older, well, maybe more mature mother to a young child?
Yeah. Okay. So that is not a joke, right? It is. So one thing I want to say about that is it was actually one of the things I actually had to get over in order to open up myself to the possibility, because I was embarrassed. I was like, what are people going to think? What are people going to say?
Right.
And, I I was like, that's so silly. Why am I going to not do something that we want because other people are going to say something? And, so I had to get over that. And then, so good news for me, I have teenagers right in the house. So in a lot of ways like that, when families years and years and years ago, there was like all kinds of children, right? So like I'm benefiting from the, teenagers helping, do a lot of the work.
Right.
And it's, from all I hear, it's really good. It's good for the teenagers. It's good for the kids. And it's also Mike is super engaged because this is his only baby.
Right.
So like, and I would say for me, my role is different than it was for the first three. And I have had to do some work in like reconciling that because when Melanie, Brooke, and Max were little, I was the primary, right? Like Brian was working, he was building a company. I was the one who managed everything. And so for Zach, it's more of a all hands on deck, but I still, and I still have these older children who now have a whole new set of issues to deal with. Like we're looking at colleges and, emotional things around friendships and, and dealing with their grief at times. So like, it is definitely different having a baby at my age with my circumstances than it was for me when they were littler, but it's good. It's great.
Yeah. And what would you say are, if you had to pinpoint like 2 or 3 things that have been really instrumental in helping you manage all of this? Like, is it a mindset? Is it therapy? What are things that you would say have really helped you to ride the ups and downs and the joys and the hard places?
Yeah, so definitely therapy for everyone. Therapy, I mean, if you don't, and it's interesting because like, and I sometimes it's not even necessarily therapy, it's like coaching, right? Being really interested in self-development. And my mindset for a long time, and probably, I don't know exactly when I put this in, but it was like, my life is not happening to me, it's happening for me. And so even in hard times, in difficult times, and I've learned to, as I age, appreciate them more. These moments where I was like, I don't want this. This is painful. It's very painful to see your children in pain, right? Yeah. Wanting, it's very hard to see that. It's very hard to lose a husband. It's very hard. It's hard to have a difficult patch in a relationship with another family member, right? Like these are not like things we want, but when we lean into them and we look to see where we can grow out of it, and all the time for me, it's like more compassion, more forgiveness for myself or for the other person. What is the perspectives? Like, what are my beliefs around this? What are their beliefs around this? Or like, what do I believe about this situation that may or may not be true? And just leaning into, and then finding support and finding people and that can help navigate that stuff when you're stuck. Yeah. Whenever you're stuck, I mean, that's like for me, like a practice. It's like when I'm stuck, I reach out. I have to, because I will drive me and everyone nuts. Yeah. So, and I don't always do it like immediately. Sometimes I choose to stay stuck for a few weeks or even a few months. But
don't we all? Yeah, Eileen? My God.
and the quicker you can build the muscle to like, I'm stuck. I'm just stuck. Yeah. Where are the resources? Who's in my space? Like, what book can I read? Yep. What person can I reach out to? What podcast can I listen to? That is going to help me get through whatever this is that I'm struggling with. Because it is truly through the struggle that the growth happens.
100%. I love it, love it, love it. So what would be, just to close, your favorite piece of advice that you would tell other women who are listening, or other people who are listening, I should say, whether about motherhood or anything? You have so much you can offer advice about. What would be your favorite piece?
I think especially because when I think about my journey with pregnancy, it was, don't give up on what you want, right? Like now listen to reason, listen to doctors, listen to but if I had not really tuned into what I really wanted and just decided to be like, oh, well, I'm just going to do the fast route, or I'm going to do this or whatever, I would never have Zach, put it that way. Be open. And this is not just about having a baby, because it's not always possible. It really isn't always possible. And I get that. And I know that I'm blessed, but anything in your life, right? Like, just because you think you're too old or you're too this or you're too that, if it's what you really want in your heart, go for it. Because what will you regret more?
Yep.
Not failing because you tried, or not trying at all.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. I love that. Love that. So please tell us, where can women connect with you? Tell us all about your book. Where can people find you? All of that good, great stuff.
Yeah. So the book can be found anywhere books are sold. So all the different online retailers, at bookstores, you probably would have to order it. But you can do that if you want to support your local bookstore.
Oh, what's the name of the book?
Oh, I'm sorry. Time to Fly, Life and Love After Loss. And I think the whole title is my, the message, right? Like, this is it.
Right.
And don't wait. I guess maybe that's the other second piece of advice.
Mm-hmm.
Don't wait. This is the time. You don't know how long we've got, right?
Sure.
Go for it.
100%.
Yeah. And then my website is my name, EileenRobertsonHamra.com. I'm also on all the social media platforms, Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. So people can connect with me there. And I just really appreciate the opportunity, being able to share my story, because it's funny when people say, oh, you lost a husband. That's so awful. But then when I say, and then I had a baby at 46, everyone's jaw drops. They're like, tell me more about that one. So I really am grateful that I got to share this piece of the story with you and with your listeners. So.
Yeah, and I'm grateful that you reached out. I know 100% there are going to be people listening who this will really resonate with them. So I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your patience. Y'all, we had some terrible technical issues on my side, and Eileen was so gracious in dealing with this, but we have recorded and it will now be out into the universe. Good. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Eileen.
Thank you.
All right. Wasn't that a great episode? It's lovely to see how Eileen was able to make the best and triumph out of what was a very difficult situation for her. Now, you know that after every episode, when I have a guest on, I do something called Nicole's Notes, where I do my top 3 or 4 takeaways from my conversation with the guest. So here are my Nicole's Notes from my conversation with Eileen. Number 1, her comment about trying IVF with her own eggs. Would she regret more that she never tried, or would she regret that she tried and failed? And she realized that she would have regretted if she never tried with her own eggs. And that resonated with me. I think you will almost always regret never trying something. Sometimes there's fear wrapped up in things and why you don't do things. And I mean, just trying things in life in general, not IVF specifically. You will regret that you didn't give something a try. In Eileen's case, she followed her instincts and things worked out great. Now, I do want to be clear that things don't always work out great when you try. Sometimes you will try and you will fail with things. As a matter of fact, I have an upcoming interview where someone did IVF and things did not work out. So all you can do is do the best that you can and go for what you want. Go for what your heart is telling you to do. You can't control the outcome, but you can control the choice to do something or to not do something. And I think that that's really meaningful and important. All right. Number 2, Eileen didn't enjoy being pregnant. She was real clear about that. And I want you to know that it is okay that if you don't enjoy being pregnant. I personally, the only thing that I liked about being pregnant was feeling my babies move. Otherwise, the rest of it, I could, throw away. Yes, I'm very grateful that my body was able to grow 2 human beings, but the feelings, I was not like great at being pregnant other than feeling the babies move. And that is okay. If you don't enjoy being pregnant, don't feel bad. It is okay. All right. Number 3, blended families take work. I think Eileen demonstrated, and she also talks about it in her book as well, I'm sure in more detail, about how you have to work to blend families together. It's not something that necessarily comes easy or straightforward. You have to put some effort in it to have a blended family and one that works. And then the final thing, when you are stuck, reach out. Sometimes it can be hard to ask for help. And as Eileen said, sometimes you go around in circles for longer than you want to before you reach out for help. But when you're stuck, reach out. I think this can be especially important in the postpartum period, where things can get crazy sometimes, things can be challenging sometimes. And, there's some expectations from our society that you should just be able to handle it, or you should just be able to deal with it, or even during pregnancy that things are normal, things are natural, that you don't have the right to think that things are going to be difficult or challenging. And sometimes they are, especially after you have a new baby. So when you are stuck, please reach out. And sometimes you have to reach out to more than one place. It may not be the first place you reach out to. You may have to find another place before you get the help that you need to get you back on track. But when you are stuck, please reach out. Okay, so there you have it. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast in Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to me right now. And I'd love it if you leave a review in Apple Podcasts. It helps the show to grow, helps other folks to find the show. And I do shout outs from those reviews from time to time as well. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at Dr. Nicole Rankins, or join my email list at drnicolerankins.com/email. So you can be the first to know about my upcoming workshop on how to make the best of your prenatal care. Of course, there are other great reasons to follow me and be on my email list as well. I provide lots of great information on social media and in a weekly email newsletter. So I would love to see you in both places. So that is it for this episode. Come on back next week. And until then, I wish you a beautiful pregnancy and birth. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the All About Pregnancy and Birth podcast. Head to my website, drnicolerankins.com, to get even more great information, including free downloadable resources on how to manage pain and labor and warning signs to look out for after birth. You'll also find information on my free online class on how to make a birth plan that works, as well as everything you need to know about my signature online childbirth education class, the Birth Preparation Course. Again, that's drnicolerankins.com, and I will see you next week.